thank everybody for being here today as we connect on our own paths to God and coming and agreeing to be part of this interfaith panel and discussion. Let me share my screen here. Okay. So as we begin, I just want to welcome you all to Ecclesia Global and one of our Ecclesia Circle conversations. And thank you all for participating today. Today's circle on connecting on our own paths to God, an interfaith panel discussion, is going to be recorded so that those who really wanted to be here and just couldn't can share in the stories that we're going to bring forth today and be encouraged by them, as well as being able to encourage people through our YouTube channel, Ecclesia Love for All. I want to begin by reading our tenets. The tenets of Ecclesia are this. Ecclesia is a movement bringing people together to love God, each other, and self unconditionally, to protect and to honor our no judgment space, to respect multiple journeys to God and those who know God differently, to actively listen to understand and celebrate our differences, to embrace all people seeking a path to God, to inspire others on our path, to seek joy and share it, and to be a catalyst for positive change. Ecclesia's vision is that all seeking God would find their path and be inspired to never stop growing in faith. And our mission is that Ecclesia provides an inclusive, judgment-free space for sharing one's authentic self and to learn from and be encouraged by our neighbors' faith experiences, which is a big part of what we're doing here today. So let me introduce our guest who so generously agreed to do this today. First up is Brahmachari Hari. He is a teacher in the Vedantic philosophy of the way of life expressed through Hinduism. Born and raised in the Dallas area, he vowed full dedication of his life to this practice, similarly to taking vows of a priest. Currently, he is ministering in the Chinmaya mission in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The mission's desire for the community reads, "We stand as one family bound to each other with love and respect. We live honestly the noble life of sacrifice and service, producing more than what we consume and giving more than what we take. We seek the Lord's grace to keep us on the path of virtue, courage, and wisdom." Brahmachari Hari, welcome. Iman Jamal Rahman is a popular speaker and author on Islam, Sufi spirituality, and interfaith relations. Along with his Interfaith Amigos, he has been featured in the New York Times, CBS News, BBC, and various NPR programs. Jamal is co-founder and Muslim Sufi Imam at Interfaith Community Sanctuary in Seattle and an adjunct faculty at Seattle University. He travels nationally and internationally, presenting at retreats and workshops. Jamal's passion lies in interfaith community building and activism. Jamal, welcome to Ecclesia. And finally, the Reverend Hanna Fitch is host of the newly launched Ecclesia Love podcast and a minister ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Hanna graduated from the University of Chicago Divinity School, known for its approach to teaching ministers of the Christian life within a religiously pluralistic world. Hanna is passionate about discovering ways the church can live into its commitment to hospitality. With this passion, she eagerly serves the 21st century church, and we are honored that she is dedicated to the radical hospitality and community of Ecclesia. So welcome back, Hanna. Thank you again, and would you join me in opening our conversation today with a prayer? Divine One of all being, we gather together a community of your making, with your vision, hope, and love, to share our faith in you and the spiritual traditions that guide our paths to you. Thank you for the heart of faith that longs for unity and invokes your messengers, known and unknown, who have appeared in all times and in all places to serve and enlighten humanity. We celebrate your spirit present with us, in us, of us, and around us, inspiring focus on the one who enlivens our lives and changes us for the better. Amen. So the goal for this session is to intentionally expand our conversation across faith, specifically interreligiously, and through sharing experiences of our personal journeys. In Ecclesia, story sharing is an important part of how we meet because it challenges us in ways that help us grow. We have the opportunity to be vulnerable, to discover new perspective, and to be inspired and encouraged to keep focused on our own path to God. So today, I'm going to be using questions as storytelling starters, but we will also make space for questions from the whole group. And in the spirit of Ecclesia, I ask that you help me in a few ways. One, if you have a question, please raise your digital hand from the control panel on your Zoom window. And if you can't find that or you're not quite sure how to make that work, you can feverishly wave at me into your camera, and that is okay too. I just want everyone to have a chance to speak, and sometimes I don't see the subtle cues that you're ready to be called on. So also, if you would share your questions and answers from your own personal experiences, and being mindful of how we're communicating, to be curious, but not to come across as judgmental in any way, and to keep your responses succinct. This is key today because obviously we have a limited amount of time together. And if time begins to slip away because one is going on a little long, I may interrupt you and ask us to keep moving on. So to stay within time. So let's begin. This first question is going to be for the whole panel, but I think we'll begin with Jamal, if that's all right. Many people of faith describe an aha moment on their journey. Can you think of a time when you experienced immense clarity with your faith?
You know, I'd like to quote the Islamic mystics that say that doesn't matter what your religion is, we are all spiritual seekers. But there are two veils that come in the way, health and wealth. When health is good, myself, loved ones, I have wealth, not just money, but also emotional security. All this talk about spirituality and God and invisible world is not only irrelevant, very inconvenient. Until one of those veils shattered, death of parents, divorce, downturn in fortune. So for me, my aha moment was when my mother came to visit me. Long story short, suddenly in a few days, unexpectedly she died. And then when my father heard the news, he died of a heart attack. So that woke me up, made me a seeker, forced me to ask deeper questions, made me move from what is called from a knowledge of the tongue to a knowledge of the heart. So let me just end by a wonderful verse from Hafiz, 14th century sage, who says, and I've read this poem so many times, but after the death of my parents, it splashed in my heart. What is the poem? Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need for God absolutely clear. That was my aha moment.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Brahmachari Hari, do you have an aha moment to share?
Yes, thank you. In the Hindu religion, it's often said that logic can take me to a certain extent, but personal experience is what puts me over the top. Really helps me understand and really feel what this knowledge is. It's like when our moms tell us, don't touch the stove, right? Just by going by the instruction, we may not understand the implication of that. But the moment we actually put our hands up there and you feel the burn, that personal experience gives you the kind of knowledge that no words can even give you. And so looking at our Hindu scriptures, there is so much that cannot be understood because it's so esoteric without the aid of a teacher. So understanding, not just through the Sunday school system I went through as a child, but in college, all those burning questions that I had, ranging from, if there is a God, why do bad things happen to good people? Starting from that basic level going forward, when all of those questions were answered by the teachers interpreting the scriptures, that's what that aha moment was, that this is infallible logic. This is the path for me.
Hannah?
There we go. So my upbringing, I was raised by two disciples of Christ pastors, and two disciples of Christ grandfathers, and there's pastors all over my family, and I grew up suspicious of church. I knew I liked the community. I knew I liked Jesus. I knew that I felt a connection to God in the terms that my family had built for me, in those terms, that language. But when I left the nest, I was really struck to defend my faith, and I was surrounded by people who really challenged the text of the Bible. They really challenged that around me. And I found it really hard, and I thought it was unfair that I wasn't prepared to respond to the challenges that the text presented. And so I kind of carried around this almost suspicion of the legitimacy of the divine word, which is a hard thing to own up to as a Christian. But I started getting into the mystics, the medieval mystics, and specifically one Hildegard of Bingen, who really opened my world up to the spiritual experience being the seed of faith, being the thing that you can start from. That faith doesn't have to start from text, and that it can start from a spiritual experience really changed the way I imagined Christianity. And I was able to use my connection that I felt to the divine as even stronger than ever, because it was legitimate, and it didn't have to be more than that at the time. And so when I realized that the connection that I felt to God driving in the car, the connection that I felt to God when I was singing, I'm a huge singer. I love singing. When I was able to connect that back to the paradigm of the doctrine, I realized, oh, this is extremely life-giving. And so I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, so thank you. Does anybody in the group have any follow-up questions to that or what anyone shared?
Yes, I have a question. Why do bad things happen to good people?
In the Hindu tenets, one common principle that you may have come across is the law of karma, which we take that colloquially to mean, oh, what goes around comes around. But the truth being that we look at ourselves right now as this holistic being right now. Me, born to my parents in this place, as this being named Brahmachari Hari Chaitanya. But holistically, according to what the scripture tells us in logic as well, this is not the only life that we lived. There have been previous lives that have been lived. And those impressions that have been made then have resulted in this body that I'm in, this situation that I'm in right now. Therefore, there is no victimhood in the Hindu philosophy, where if there is something that has happened to me, it is the result of an action either in the immediate past or the remote past. And coming to that understanding then takes a lot of maturity and is mind-bending at times, that I'm going through so much right now. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Why am I going through it? That logical explanation doesn't really help us at that moment. But when things have calmed down, understanding the philosophy, understanding the idea of those previous lives and what their effects are now, that's how we come to that understanding.
I'd like to say something about that. I fully respect what you said, brother. And I believe very much in karma. But, I was in a big conference once with my rabbi friend. And somebody asked the same question, and my friend got very agitated, very upset. I mean, really upset. He said, "Then how do you explain the Holocaust, the Shoah?" Anyhow, so it's something we have to really, really ponder on very, very deeply. So I want to honor what you have said, and also add one thing more. In the Islamic mystical tradition, there's a story. It's not in the Quran, but it's a extra Quranic story that before God sent all of humanity down to earth, he gathered all of the unborn humanity and took them to a huge cosmic tree. And on the limbs of the branches were packages of different sizes, small, medium, large. And God said, these are packages of suffering. It's a world of duality. There'll be joy, but there'll also be suffering. And before you go down, take one of those packages. You can take any package you want. The nobler ones among us chose to take the larger packages so others would suffer less. And so now when on earth, when people are suffering, the Islamic mystics say, don't question it, don't analyze it, just be grateful and be of service to them, that they took the larger packages so we might suffer less. With gratitude, be of authentic service, be a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder, help somebody's soul heal. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's so helpful to hear these perspectives that help, at least in my case, changing the focus from from my suffering to looking at gratitude differently. When we teach that in Christianity as well, to be grateful and thankful to God in all circumstances. However, it's that easier said than done some days. And I think that visual is very helpful to me to think, someone has it worse. Not that is anything to celebrate, but that it is another way of perhaps getting me over a hump some days, to think that my situation is bearable. So thank you for sharing that. Any other follow-up questions before I go on to the next? Okay. Again, this question will be for each of you. We will start with Brahmachari Hari on this one. What are some of the most powerful images of your faith tradition? And what do you want other people to know about your tradition?
So starting off, when we think of Sanatana Dharma, that's the name in Sanskritam for Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana meaning eternal, that which is unbroken, never had a beginning, never has an end to it. And then Dharma is that essence of everything, is the Dharma. So in the Hindu religion, one of the major symbols that we'll come across is Om. That's the primordial sound. And that Om is the life in everything. And one other symbol I'd like to focus on today, since we're talking about interfaith experiences, is one misunderstood symbol is the swastika. Where as a Hindu, the swastika represents auspiciousness. And it's a symbol that has been around since the very beginning of time, since the inception of the religion. Now, as a Hindu today, a swastika is something that we would use as an auspicious symbol on clothing, to put in front of our houses, on our windows. However, I'm so reluctant to do that today as a Hindu because of the misconception and seeming like I'm anti-Semitic. Now, the truth behind that is that Adolf Hitler had misappropriated the Hindu swastika and used it as his symbol. That's what's commonly believed. In truth, though, and this has come to light in recent years, that it's actually something called the Hakim Krus, is what that is. And that has nothing to do with Hinduism. So misappropriated as a symbol and used for nefarious purposes has nothing to do with Hinduism. And there are laws in place now in places like California and Washington, D.C., where they're trying to right that wrong and make it not a hateful symbol, but truly understanding what the symbol represents. So over time, symbols of auspiciousness have been misappropriated, changed in many ways, but the auspiciousness, the true history, and the true meaning of that symbol still does remain. And the last point I'd like to add on this is being such a diverse religion, where Hinduism, India is the homeland, and there are something like 18 to 20 officially recognized languages. Imagine that. You travel just a couple states, or every state, there's a new language, completely different in customs, completely different in everything that they do. Their imagery may be different, the symbols they use may be different, but it still falls under that one umbrella of Hinduism. And that beauty and diversity, which we find here today with us, we find out within the Hindu religion as well. So that's wonderful to see.
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. I have a follow-up question. I will hold it for after the other two have shared, but I'm so glad that you went the direction you went with that answer. Okay, Hannah, would you like to answer? I mean, do I need to repeat the question?
I think I got it.
Okay.
Some of the most powerful images of Christianity, of course, I can't speak to, it's powerful to me. The Christian Church Disciples of Christ, my tradition, it's a mainline Protestant denomination. We always talk about the table. The table is such a centerpiece of how we identify. Among other things, but disciples gather at the table and partake of communion every time that we gather. And so a lot of times that's at committee meetings, that's at church camp, that's at Sunday school, that's not just in corporate worship. I think that the way that we gather and that coming together, a lot of times you hear the spiritual but not religious folks say, I feel spiritual in nature and in solitude. And I think that that's powerful, and I can actually identify with that. But what's so powerful about the gathering for me is that corporate action, is the gathering, is the collection. And there's more to say about, the body of Christ and, participating in the world as one, with many. And there's a lot to say about that, but I want to talk about, or I just want to mention that the gathering of the table is rooted in that history, in that upper room, not auspicious, not this glorified event at the time, and just this humble gathering of people that hold conviction. That's a powerful That's a powerful image for me, something that I get to live into literally every time there are disciples around. So that's one. And then, what do I want people to know about the tradition? I wish people understood that Christianity was always meant to be a movement. It was always meant to have it worked toward an end. And that end, in my purview, has always been justice. It's not about personal gain. It's not about, it's not meant to align with any one nation or political position. It's always been about justice and perseverance and the collective doing. I wish we would treat Christianity that way, and I wish other people knew that.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a good reminder, even for those like myself who are coming out of that same tradition. Jamal?
Yes, since I'm psychic, I know I'm the next one. So, let me start with just briefly mentioning what is Islam. It's the most misunderstood religion. The word Islam literally means to surrender in peace. The question is, what are you surrendering? So the Quran is suggesting you're surrendering your attachment to your ego. And that's called the nafs in the Quran. You're surrendering in peace your attachment to your ego so that, as the Quran says, you can bring a heart turned in devotion to God. Now, where is the problem when we talk about a religion, particularly these days with the politics raging around us, a lot of extremism and a lot of anger, fear? Every holy book, this is very critical to understand, has two kinds of verses: particular verses and universal verses. Particular verses are in desperate need of historical and textual context. Universal verses are timeless, placeless, filled with wisdom. The problem becomes when you take a particular verse and advocate that as a universal verse. Or you take a particular verse from Islam, as is happening with many Christian, funded websites that are anti-Islamic. They will take a particular verse from the Quran and compare that to a universal verse from the other tradition. That's an unfair comparison. So what is Islam about? Really, it's a normal religion like any other religion. If you look deeply, every religion at its core, the sages say, from people from their own tradition say, it has two purposes, every religion. Number one, to really help one to evolve into the fullness of one's being, to become more Christ-like, Buddha-like, Elohim-like, Krishna-like, Buddha-like. That's one half. The other half is to be of service to God's creation, to serve God. So if I think of images, the first image that comes to mind is a prayer rug, because Muslims, they pray a lot. And prayer is mostly just about praise and gratitude. And they use the body to express this praise of God, using the gift of a body to express gratitude and praise of God. So I love that saying about prayer, the body prayer, that one prostration of prayer to God liberates you, frees you from 1,000 prostrations to your ego. So prayer can help. Then there's some of you may have seen the picture of the Kaaba. Ring a bell for anybody? Kaaba, that's draped in black, stone building in the Grand Mosque in Mecca, symbolically the house of God. Muslims from all over the world, 24 hours a day, are bowing and prostrating where? In the direction of the Kaaba. So some mystics say, take the Kaaba away. What do you see? People are bowing to one another. Prayer is really also about service to others, honoring the other and being of service to the other. A third one is, you'll see pictures of the prayer bead, 99 beads. Muslim sages say you can never understand God, indescribable, unutterable, inconceivable, but you can understand God through 99 divine attributes. The most important one of that in the Islamic tradition is compassion. Lastly, in Islamic mysticism, you'll always see a symbol of the heart. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had a dream where God said to him, passed his message to humanity. God said, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart. So the heart is very important, central, like other traditions in Islamic spirituality.
All beautiful symbols. Thank you. Follow-up questions to Tracy. Thank you. Oh, you muted still.
I guess my hand doesn't show up, but I'll just wave.
I see it now.
My question is for Brahmachari. You mentioned about the swastika here in this country, but I'm hoping one day to go to India. If I go to India, will I see it in lots of places, on people's homes, or office places or places of worship? And where would they be? In public places?
Yes, you'll see them in front of people's houses, on temple premises, as well as when there are festivals going on. If the festival is being celebrated in a public place, there will be a makeshift swastika there. And it is fairly common to see in India. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Rick?
Hi, yes. About the swastika, I'm curious. I'm assuming, I really have assumed, that the swastika is the Germanic name for the symbol. What is it really called?
The swastika, the word comes from Sanskritam, the Sanskrit language,
Okay.
where swa is that which is auspicious. And that's how it comes about. So they used that word because what the Hitler used is called the Hakenkreuz, also called the hooked cross, is where he took it from. In his Mein Kampf, he also writes about that. But to assign the blame somewhere far out so that they could say this is coming from this tradition, it was called the swastika for the first time, I believe, in a New York Times article back in the early 30s, and that's when it stuck from then onwards.
Thank you.
Anyone else have follow-up thoughts or questions? Oh, Dave, you got your hand up. Zoom music.
The swastika is not only it was also a good luck symbol for a lot of Native American tribes. If you go to the University of Oklahoma's campus in Norman, Oklahoma, there are a number of buildings there that have swastikas carved into the marble. And the 45th Infantry Division, that was famous infantry division, World War II. In the 20s and 30s, they used to have a swastika on their shoulder patch for their infantry designation badge. And then that changed as Hitler, that became associated with Nazi Germany and Nazism and fascism. It changed to a Thunderbird. There's a history museum in Oklahoma City for the 45th Infantry Division that documents that change from the swastika to the Thunderbird. So,
Thank you for sharing that. Welcome, Kevin. Glad you were able to jump on and join us. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to acknowledge the three symbols for you, the swastika, the prayer rug, the table. I really can appreciate all of that. I think, first of all, the misunderstood symbols really resonates with me. And as a Christian, it's really frustrating when I also come out of a particular Christian tradition that is very progressive. And I have always been that way. And so when I've made friends through the years, and unfortunately, they may have had a less than loving or less than joyful religious journey of their own, that Christianity may have been oppressive to them in some way. And I hate that so many people they probably see a cross, and I feel that same thing, that they don't understand perhaps what it represents, certainly what it represents to me. And I think I have to thank Hanna for bringing the table into the conversation, because we all are familiar with the communion table for a Christian church, but in the Disciples of Christ denomination, the table is the central focus. And it really represents the table that is for all people. And any exclusion from communion even is really not part of my tradition. And so I really appreciate bringing these things into focus, and the prayer rug too for me, because the prayer, while I don't use the rug, I may start using a rug because it's yet again something to keep me focused on God. And just like religion, these icons of sorts are all tools, right? They're all just tools to help us stay focused on God. So thank you for sharing all of that. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Jamal, this next question is for you. If you could speak to your younger self with all of his questions or fears and anxieties, what lesson would you want to impart about your spirituality?
One simple message: no matter what religion you're in, glean those spiritual practices and practice them, live them. I want to just mention 2 points here. I was on a panel on racism, and this African American professor was saying every 28 hours, an African American is being killed by state-sponsored violence. We were shocked. He said, that's not the real problem. The real problem is African American is being killed 1 billion. B for Bangladesh. I'm from Bangladesh. B for boy. 1 billion times a day. We said, how? He said, by those biases, prejudices, stereotyping that we have of the other. So my point here is, we can have legislation critical, education is critical, but unless we, through spiritual practices, overcome our biases, our prejudices, our stereotyping, we will not structurally change the social injustices. Similarly, this has gone viral. One of the advisors to President Carter, scientific advisor, said, for 30 years I thought the biggest environmental problems were loss of biodiversity, climate change, ecosystem collapse, and with 30 years of good science, we could take care of it. He said, now I've realized that science cannot take care of it. We need spiritual practices because the root cause of all these planetary degradation is selfishness, greed, and apathy. How do you take care of that? We need spiritual practices, no matter what your religion. And if you're against religion, okay, practice silence. There's no such thing as a Hindu silence, Christian silence, Muslim silence, Jewish silence. It's just silence. But we all need practices, call it psychological, sociological, religious, spiritual, ways to become more compassionate, more loving, more forgiving, more patient, more being of service to others, less angry. These practices, I will say to my younger friends, is critical to start at a young age.
Thank you. Brahmachari Hari, what is one way that people of other traditions or beliefs can begin to engage with your tradition without fully immersing oneself in it?
I found this to be the most interesting question because one mindset that we seem to adopt is, I would like to take the good from various religions, not have to immerse myself and have the label of being a part of that religion, but still derive the benefits from it. It's like going to a buffet and then, hey, who wants to eat a salad there, right? Let me go straight to the dessert section, fill it up with what I want, and then I'll be happy. But the truth is, and it's a realistic truth here. Truths are all realistic, what am I saying? But when it comes to certain aspects and cherry picking certain parts that's being immersed fully in the religion, we really miss out. And I'll give you an example. Yoga. There are, at this point in the United States, more practitioners of yoga than there are people that play baseball. Just let that sink in, how many people do yoga in the United States. Now, yoga is seen as a non-religious activity. They say that you don't really have to subscribe to Hinduism to do yoga. It's simply just postures. But in truth, what yoga is, the word yoga comes from the root word yuj in Sanskrit, yuj. Yuj means union with the higher, is what it means. So that brings up the next question. By doing these different postures, how is that making me some kind of union with the higher? How does that even work? There's so much more to yoga than just the postures and what we call breathing exercises. Whether it's pranayama, which is what the breathing exercises are, whether it's asanas, which is what the body postures are, all of these are part of a holistic system that makes our bodies, minds, intellects all in tandem, all in union with that higher, where it's pretty much like making a magnet that's constantly in that union. Now, if we were to just pick up a part of yoga, not immerse ourselves in the religion at all, just do the yoga asanas, the postures, we miss out on that extra holistic lifestyle of abstaining from alcohol, abstaining from drugs, vegetarian diet, regulated sexual activity. All of that is the very basic part of reliving that yoga lifestyle. And then comes everything else, all the religious philosophy behind it that really enhances what the practice even is. So as much as we'd like not to retain a label of a certain religion, take up certain aspects, follow a tradition without immersing ourselves, because Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, is so holistic in its understanding and its broadness of what it gives, that kind of cherry picking is really not possible if we're staying true to what the tradition is.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot to open it up for questions when Jamal was answering his question, but so you have an opportunity now for either gentleman if you have a follow-up question. Dave, you've got your hand up on the screen. You still have a question? Zoom user. I don't know where he is. Anyone else have a follow-up?
I don't, sorry.
Okay.
Excuse me. I have an observation. The observation is that I can't talk. Passing that, it seems that both, I don't call them religions because that's narrowing. It's more of a lifestyle than anything else. It sounds as if you don't explain it. You don't understand it in the same way that you would understand hard science. It's more of a listening with your soul instead of your head. And you know, that listening in the quiet moments with what your soul has to say can drive everything else. And it sounds like what both gentlemen have said seems like that's a direction to go into. Or I could just be really full of crap. Okay.
Any other observations? Okay. Hannah,
Yes.
next question is for you. Where are you? There you are. Your bio speaks of your passion for ways the Christian church can live into its commitment to hospitality. Would you like to expand on that for us?
Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of thinking about the great exodus that seems to be happening in the Christian church. In fact, I've written on this, and really I tried to ask, what is it? I study generations and their approaches to spirituality, and the bigger question that emerged was, why are millennials so against institutions in general, and what's going on there, and what does that mean for the church? Something that I've committed my life to being a part of. And it comes down to the question of hospitality. I think that the best hospitality is when we can feel like we are truly ourselves, when we don't have to perform, when we don't have to mold and contort into expressions of ourselves that don't seem authentic. And what I perceive in some of my research, but also in my own faith journey and spiritual life, is that so much of the way that we are participating with society, with other institutions like politics, like marriage, like education, and of course religion, I feel like we have to do a lot of contorting and a lot of forgiving. There's been a loss of trust. There's been a loss of accountability. There's been a loss of consistency, as far as I can see. And when we don't take those things seriously, those tenets of hospitality, where people can genuinely show up authentically and have a sense of trust and belonging because they can be themselves, then we can't forge a real connection. And if you ask me, spirituality, my pursuit of spirituality has always been about forging a genuine connection, whether that's with myself or with my values, with the divine, with others, with a tradition. Spirituality has always been about forging a genuine connection. And so the question about how can, the Christian church live into that better, I think that we can do that formally in the way that we are conscious of the language we're using in corporate worship and in corporate gathering. And I think we can do that informally or personally by embracing every single encounter of the other as an exciting opportunity for growth, for awareness, for a genuine connection. And I think that to do that, we get to do the humbling, we get to do the self-emptying to be present to who that person is, and not just being present. That's like maybe the first step of that journey, but also finding the celebration in that uniqueness and finding the care and finding the way to amplify that unique lived experience. And so I think that we can do that a lot better. And I think we have the tools to do it. I don't know if we collectively have that commitment. And so I'd like to see us try.
Nice. Jamal, you were nodding your head an awful lot. Would you like to comment on that, what your thoughts were?
Oh, you're talking to me?
Yes.
Yes. No, I agree so much with what my sister said, but I want to extend it a little bit further, the hospitality in a different way to those and with those who are outside our tribe. Even somebody who is adversarial. I mean, my work, actually, my ministry is working with those who are anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, etc., anti. And so we say, let's share 3 cups of tea. Listen, respect, connect. To really listen to the other. You know, I love the words of Rumi. What is listening? Metaphorically, listening is like putting your head on the person's chest and just sinking into the answer. An enemy sometimes is somebody whose story I have not listened to. So listening. Number 2, respect. You know, I might be against that person's behavior, unacceptable. But that person's being, essence, is sacred. It's Christ nature, Buddha nature, Allah nature. It's a divine spark. You know, there's a wonderful, both a Hindu and a Muslim mystic from India, 15th century sage named Kabir, who says, in dealing with an adversary, do what is right. Protect yourself. Don't allow yourself to be abused. Take the right action. But as you take the right action, I beg you, I implore you, do not keep this person's essence, divine spark, out of your heart. Just keeping this differentiation in our mind and heart as we take the right action has the power to shift heaven and earth. And lastly, connect on a human level. You know that wonderful saying by a Christian writer who says, this universe is made out of stories, not atoms. Once we connect on a human level, it becomes very difficult to dehumanize and demonize the other. And it also opens the space for us to collaborate on projects of mutual interest, social justice issues, earth care. So 3 cups of tea.
I like the 3 cups of tea.
Thank you.
Brahmachari Hari, would you like to add anything to all that?
Yes. And I agree with Imam Sahab when he says that having that compassion and that hospitality to those, even when we're hurt by them, that's that openness that we are to have. And I see that so much in the Hindu religion. Growing up, I had this idea, and I went through agnostic phase. I think every young man does at one point or the other. And that phase was maybe there's something up there, but religion has divided people. I want no part of that. These kinds of labels have hurt people more than they've helped, was my viewpoint. Looking at the Hindu tradition, though, I found that even in the time of King Solomon, when there were many Jews who had fled their homeland, India was a safe haven for them, where there was no compunction on them to convert to Hinduism. And even today, they trace their lineage back to that origin. And there are Jews in India who are thriving, free to practice their religion. And the same goes for Persians that came to India as well. They're called Parsis. It's a group. They've ingratiated themselves into Indian society, but still remain with their religion, and they're free to do so. So that is especially poignant given that the Hindu people have faced nearly 1,000 years of trauma, whether it was Islamic invasion started in 700 AD to Christian invasions later. Just that's a historical fact that those things did happen. And over thousands, 40,000 temples were broken down during those invasions, and famines were caused, all of these things. Now, despite all of that happening, that could have hardened the Hindu heart and said, we're not going to accept people, we're going to be wary of them. But because of that Hindu ethos, truly of what tolerance is, what really opening our arms is, that's really led to a really good pluralistic society. So much so that in the 16th century, during the reign of the Mughal Empire, there was a Frenchman by the name of Francois Bernier who visited India. And in his writings, he marvels at the fact that when we encounter these Hindus, they're always praising us, saying that you may be different in your beliefs and what your idea of God is, but you're right in your own way, and we're right in our own way. And he said that while they were open to us and saying that we are right in our own way, they weren't going to get converted because they had so much conviction in their own teachings. So standing up for what we believe is always great, as well as just be and let live to others who are practicing peacefully. And that is really the ethos of a true Hindu practitioner. And coming from that agnostic face of this understanding, it's only the blessings of my teacher and the Almighty that I'm able to come to this understanding.
Thank you. Does anyone have follow-up questions about any of that? It was just shared.
You know, I do want to add, I love Hinduism and particular diversity and the tolerance, but I must say in today's politics, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Hinduism, there's a lot of extremism that is going on. Whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's the Arab countries, Israel, all over, America, other countries. So we have to be aware that there's a rising tide of intolerance, lack of appreciating diversity, and feeling that one's tribe, whether it's religion or culture or politics, is the greatest. And that's something that we have to work on really in a very spiritual way. And that's a whole different topic, how to do it.
That's part 2, right? Kevin, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. All right. Rachel, thank you. Rachel, you're up.
No, I just wanted to flag it for Ranu because her hand has been up.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. This is a very meaningful conversation as always, and I'm so grateful to this group. I couldn't help but think about my father at this time, because this concept of radical hospitality, especially what Ecclesia has shown to me, and here we are speaking about it regarding our 3 cups of tea, the concept of pluralism, understanding the symbols when you go into someone's home. This is something I grew up with without even realizing, was just immersed into my life. And what a beautiful thing to be able to enjoy. And coming to the table, these are things I really feel so much gratitude to, again, our teachers, and our first teachers can be our parents. And I feel I have to just tell them thank you through all of you for showing me that no one ever came to our door without leaving without a cup of tea or something to eat or a glass of water. This was something. Is it a cultural aspect of it? Is it part of the religious upbringing? I think this was something that was always ingrained within us, that human that comes in has a divine spirit within them and they're meeting yours. So offering for their comfort, and they would never leave the home unless they were given the opportunity to sit down and either have a meal or to share something of food, something of sustenance. So thank you for those reminders. I just wanted to comment on that. And I can see the commonality through and through in this group. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one. Rick, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention that this just came to me. Being raised the way I was, just it is a brief background. Michelle knows this. Hell, everyone knows it. But when my mother was a Christian, my father a Catholic, and my father was a strange combination of being both Lutheran and Jewish. And as a result of that, they could never agree with how I was to be raised in a spiritual sense. So their response was to do nothing and say, "Here, you figure it out." And in the process, their attitude, and which kind of better worse rubbed up on me, there is no one best, there is no one right. Each religion, each belief has got its own, and I don't want to say strength, but they all have, even though if they're different, they all have a common belief that everyone is going toward. And as soon as you realize that, I'm a Christian, I'm better than anyone else. No, you're not. It's that we can all take from what each other has learned and improve, not improve, but understand that and add our voices to the collective. So that's why I think I think today is just absolutely fascinating.
Can I add a metaphor to that, Brother Rick? There's a wonderful, beautiful metaphor from nature. All the rivers, they flow into the ocean. Jamal, you might be following one river, but please do not mistake the river for the ocean.
I like that.
Okay. Before I forget the thought, I think we're like-minded in this group. And I love this conversation, and I know we will get to have more at some point. But if you can all agree with me that we would be praying about how do we have more of these conversations with more people that may not be as like-minded as we are. That's really the challenge, and I don't know what that answer is. Jamal is out there doing this kind of work pretty intentionally, and may have some thoughts on that. And but I didn't want to take the time now to break away from that, but I just wanted to put that out there because that's something that I don't have that answer, and I would welcome your thoughts on that if you have any. Okay, one last question for the panel, and then we'll open it up for the rest of the group. So I just want to leave enough room here for everyone to share what you want to share. If any of the Ecclesia folks as well want to, of course, you're all now part of Ecclesia. You didn't know that, did you? That just by being on here, you're now part of us. But I want to give space for more conversation and storytelling and sharing among the group. So one last question for all three of you. We talked a little bit about the traditions and what matters to you. I guess I would like to hear a story from each of you of how are you living into your own personal faith? Let me see. Hanna, let's start with you this time. Give the guys a chance to think about that. How are you living into your personal faith? And what is a story like that you'd really love to share with the group to encourage us and inspire us?
Oh, that's a lot of, okay, I can do it.
I know, right?
You're gonna be inspired after this, everybody. When I think about how I consider my faith very practical. I believe that if my faith isn't serving me in real daily ways, then I'm doing it wrong. And one of the beliefs or the tenets that I've leaned into over and over and over again is that we are Easter people, that the story of Jesus dying on the cross and being resurrected after the third day, and then us subscribing to that story as truth, and as meaningful and as central to our beliefs. To me, that makes us Easter people. And the way that I interpret that is that resurrection and that renewal and that newness and, the saving of relationships of what is broken is possible, and it is divinely supported. And so I have to turn to that belief. I have to say, I'm an Easter person. Okay, look, I'm an Easter person. I have to say that when I feel hopelessness, or when I feel personally attacked, or when I am certainly wronged. And so fairly recently, I've been wronged in a big way, in a way that I had every right to disregard the relationship, to let go, release the connection entirely. That was going to be painful in the long run, but I'm an Easter person. I believe that renewal and goodness can come out of that which is broken. And that has informed a lot of the activism that I do, a lot of the way that I engage the really difficult texts that we have to wrestle with, the ones that seem incongruent with the message of love and hope in the Bible. And so I think I live into my faith in a practical, life-giving way when I remind myself that we are Easter people, and that renewal and that resurrection is possible and that God is part of it.
Thank you. Any follow-up thoughts to what Hanna just shared? Okay, let's go to Brahmachari Hari next.
So if you look at my name, it's quite a mouthful, but the first part is Brahmachari, which is what stage of life that I'm in. Where I made a decision several years ago in my mid-20s that I wanted to lead a monastic life as a Hindu monk. So right now I'm a Brahmachari, which is a monk in training is what it is. And later on, you may have heard of the term Swami. Those are monks who wear orange, and that's the full monkhood. This is a monk in training right now. So I did a 2-year intensive course in Mumbai, India, in the Hindu scriptures. And after that course, I was initiated into the order and placed in Dallas, Texas to serve in Chinmaya Mission Dallas, Fort Worth in our center here. So upon taking this path, or even when I was deliberating it, lots of the backlash I got from community members, family members was, hey, why do you want to give up everything to take this path? Where it's a path of celibacy, a vow of poverty, as well as there is no vocation outside of this. Teaching and dissemination of the knowledge is what our main focus is. And I thought to myself, from a practical standpoint, if I'm interested in this now, why wait to take advantage of this and really lead this life that I want to lead? While I have my physical faculties in check, my mental faculties with me, let's do it now. Why wait till 70 or 80 and then take it? Who knows if I'm even going to be alive by then? Anything can happen, right? And on the more holistic spiritual level as well, it was the idea that how many lifetimes have I lived in different bodies, being immature, not taking religion seriously? That's led me to this point. Why not take advantage of the spark right now? And with it, as Ms. Fitch pointed out, there is an activist element to it as well in my line of work, where Hindu phobia today in the world is rampant. Whether it's genocide denial, whether it's in the academic realm, whether it's in media and politics, we do face a fair amount of Hindu phobia. And the worst thing that can happen because of this Hindu phobia is a Hindu American kid growing up somewhere in the United States says, let me let go of my Hindu religion because of what I see out there, believing those lies about Hinduism. That's something that's close to my heart as well, because I was one of those kids. Influenced by what was out there, my own religion was misunderstood by me because of external influences that were Hindu phobic. I don't want that to happen to this next generation. Because this next generation of Hindus in America, looking at our heritage, we're not going to be making trips to India as often as the previous generation. Just because for people that are having kids right now, their grandparents live in America. There's no reason to go back so often. The language can also be lost, but these religious traditions can be kept alive. And I owe that all to a great Hindu sage named Swami Chinmayanandaji. He lived in the 20th century, and he's the founder of Chinmaya Mission, where he was a globetrotter going around the world. And at that time, in the 1950s, he taught this religion in English, which was unheard of. And he said, regardless of gender, caste, creed, social status, you are welcome to learn this knowledge. This knowledge is divine. You are divine. This is your knowledge for the taking. And it's with that sentiment that he built this organization to be what it is now, 300 centers worldwide. And if I can be a small piece, one tiny cog in that entire machine that's serving humanity so much, I said, let's do this. And Michelle Beach, I'll end with this. Miss Beach had read part of the Chinmaya Mission pledge in my introduction. Our motto that we have is to give the maximum happiness to the maximum people for the maximum amount of time. Not to the maximum number of Hindus, not to as long as it only helps Hindus. That's not our goal at all. Maximum people, maximum time, maximum happiness. That's the motto that we stand on. That's our standpoint for service. Thank you.
Any follow-up thoughts or questions for him? Tracy?
Well, that explains a lot about why I always am so happy whenever I'm around Ranu. Okay, now back to what you just said. God is such a big mystery to me. when you think about your next life, what do you have any like sense about where do you go from here if you're a monk now? What, it seems like you're at the top.
It's an awesome question. Where the entire goal of realizing this knowledge is, there is no future birth once this knowledge is realized. Once I understand what my true identity is as this divine being, there is no life going forward. Now, that's kind of hard to wrap our heads around because no other religion says something this emphatically about the idea of rebirth and what it is to transmigrate further, but that is the end goal. And what's given in our Hindu scriptures is letting go of all attachments is one of the preliminary steps, but a necessary step to gain that knowledge. And this lifestyle of being a monk is conducive to letting go of as many attachments as possible on the physical level and mental ostentations as well.
Wow. Thank you.
All right. Jamal, would you like to answer? Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'll just make two quick points, but thank you so much for those inspiring notes by the two speakers. One point is the beauty and the wisdom of really having an interfaith perspective. I'm a Muslim, I'm rooted in Islam, but I'm open to the beauty and wisdom of other traditions. I really drink from that. And I find that this not only makes me a better Muslim, but a more developed human being. That is why we say interfaith is not about conversion. Interfaith is about completion, becoming a more complete, more developed human being. Professor Houston Smith, I don't know if you've heard the name. He was one of the greatest comparative religion teachers. He died recently. Professor Houston Smith said, you can look at your holy book, in my case, the Quran, from one angle. But if you study other religions, and you can look at it from different angles also, the same Quran, it gives you a more complete, deeper understanding. So I've learned a lot from Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. As Mahatma Gandhi said, he was very wise. He said, if you really want peace in a multi-religious society, and here is his famous words, every word is very deep, it is the sacred duty of every individual to have an appreciative understanding of the other person's religion. Sacred duty to have an appreciative understanding. Not enough to say, no, I'm a non-prejudiced person, I'm an open-minded person. Gandhi would say, what are you open-minded about? Okay, so that's just one point. The other point is, I feel each one of us needs, especially as we grow older, spiritual companions, critical. There's a wonderful verse by Rumi who says, a wall standing alone is useless. Add to it other walls. It can support a roof, even a granary. Only when ink joins with a pen can the blank paper say something. We all need community, but particularly what my brothers and sisters would call Sangha, a circle of love, a group of spiritual intimate companions with whom you can share, be vulnerable, and grow together spiritually. Learn spiritual practices from one another. Remember, even prophets sought companions. Prophet Muhammad said, your spiritual practices are only as good as those of your close friends. Therefore, choose your close friends wisely. So that's very important to me also.
I love your metaphors and your
Thank you.
illustrations are so wonderful. I've shared this with this group, but I'll say it here again today. Ranu, or Samita Misra here in our group today, a great example of that community is in an unexpected place. She came as a guest speaker a little over a year ago to share her faith journey stories around Hinduism when we were beginning to explore world religions. And I grew up in the Christian faith, And I have always had a prayer life, but I've never had prayer disciplines. And she was sharing of her mother teaching her to usher in the day with the first focus on God and using all five senses to tap into that and to focus, and then ushering out the day the same way. So we begin our focus of the day and end our day with God. And I thought, what a beautiful practice. And so that actually got me started on my own practice of ushering in the day focused on God. And so that's something that if I had not had a circle of people that could be these walls that come together to hold up the roof, that may never have happened. So I really appreciate that. All right, well, we have a few minutes left. I want to open it up for just open discussion, questions, dialogue for the group. If you have something you'd love to share in your own stories and your journeys, or if you would like to ask anyone from our panel group if a particular question. I don't see hand. Rick, you're unmuted.
I am. I've been talking a lot, Richard, and I really apologize for that, but I want to thank all three of our speakers. This has been just an amazing hour. That it's both inspirational and I'm not going to use spiritual, but it's inspirational and it makes you look inward. It makes you look inward so you can look outward better. And I really appreciate that. And, thank all three of you.
And I just wanted to state that I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity because I feel like all my life I've been trying to find commonality among all of us. It was not easy being raised in a society where you're the only brown kid on the block kind of a thing. And it was a big challenge. Let's just say that. There is a meant to be feeling being present with all of you, and I appreciate each one of you taking the time. I only see commonality in the faces I see today, and I appreciate it from my heart. I truly feel that each one of you have something common to share. It's interesting. I just wanted to comment that Iman Rahman has the same language background as I do, because he said he's from Bangladesh and my parents are from West Bengal, India.
Oh.
So you see this type of connection. We're on two sides of a border, a political and a geographical type of a border, but it goes back many years, that there's some commonality that is in place. And with Reverend Fitch and with Brahmachari Hari, I so appreciate my heart. I always felt like I was at the table with this group, and then with what Brahmachari Hari is doing in our community, leading the way, giving us hope and inspiration to have a better understanding of ourselves and taking responsibility for the messaging and the communication that we can represent, each one of us, to try to help our humanity. I truly appreciate all the efforts. So thank you so much for really highlighting our own, and inspiring us. Like, I think, Michelle, that was one of your goals, is to come out of this more inspired and to come together to deliver the message of what we can do while we are on this earth. And that's the other thing. We think that this is the life, right? This is just on this chapter in this planetary existence on this earth. So as a Hindu, we know that there's the universe is consciousness, and that's a huge concept to grasp. But this is just a little blip in our drama and our journey here on this planet. So have faith. There's so much opportunity yet to be had.
That's wonderful. I just want to say in Bengali, Onek dhonnobad. That's a lot of thanks. Thank you.
We have an expression in our Christian Church Disciples of Christ tradition. We say unity, not uniformity. And of course, we're speaking across Christian traditions typically when we say that, but it goes for everything. And I think when Jamal first said to me, you first said it in terms of it's interfaith is not about conversion. It's about connection, is what we were talking about that day. And I think that's the same for me with the unity. We have a unity in our love for the divine and our reverence for the divine, but we may not have uniformity, and that is in how we do that, how we express that, and that's okay.
Wonderful. I'd like to say also, in our community, in our interfaith community here in Seattle or in Washington State, we say, diversity is not just about acknowledging diversity or even honoring diversity. It's about celebrating diversity.
It is. Anyone else? No,
Something popped up,
okay.
and it's a karma question. That each time you build on what came before you in this life, can you do something, or are you doing something intentionally now that will serve you in the next life? Essentially, can you pay it forward knowing that what I'm doing now is going to affect me in a positive way later?
Yeah. So in scripture, it's given in the Hindu scriptures that there are certain practices that can be done in this lifetime so that there is a better quality of life in the next life. Even if it's not realization of this true identity so that there's no more transmigration, at least a better quality life in the next life. Where to get really technical here, we live in this world right here. Hindu scriptures tell us that there are 14 worlds available to us. That there are higher regions where life is much easier, lower regions where life is much more difficult, and there are beings that transmigrate through these levels. And now it may sound very silly that there are 14 worlds. This seems like a myth and a fantasy, but those same Hindu scriptures, when they talk about science as well, point out so many truths that we've come to in recent times. Gravity is mentioned in the Hindu scriptures. The earth is called Bhugola, not flat. It's called Bhugola, means something that's globular, the shape of a globe. That's the description of earth that's given. The 7 continents are described. And these are texts that have been around since at least 8,000 BC, at the very, very latest 8,000 BC. So these descriptions of the worlds, how the transmigratory path takes place, all of this is given there along with so much scientific information. And so it's really taken as valid that certain actions, certain rituals that I perform in this life, certain modes of worship will lead to a better quality life where closeness to the Almighty, service to the Lord, that is much easier to do in that next life as well. It's always a growing process.
Thank you.
Bruce or Kevin or Rachel, and either of you have any thoughts or questions? Want to give everybody a chance if you want it.
I'm with everyone else in saying thank you. I can't believe it's been an hour and that it's already done. I've enjoyed listening to every one of you. It's been a beautiful Saturday. Thank you.
What about our South Park friend? Do you have something you want to say?
Bruce?
Hi. Thank you for having me. Well, first of all, I want to thank Michelle for inviting me. She called me at about 1:30 today to remind me. I just met her Thursday, actually, in person at our Disciples of Christ Retreat Center, Christ Mount in Black Mountain, North Carolina. So I've really, really enjoyed this last hour. Again, like somebody else said, Rachel, I think just I can't believe it's been an hour. I want to just address and also just say how much I agree with this unity, not uniformity. I believe that all of us as human beings, our unity comes from the fact that we are just children of the divine. In whatever name or names we call that divine, we are just children of the divine. And in that, we need to find respect and kindness and compassion one for another. And in our diversity, we can find the beauty of the earth and the beauty of God's creation. And we can celebrate that. And if we celebrate that, how much more peaceful this world would be. So thank you again for having me.
Glad you could come on.
Oh, and Imam Rahman, My hometown is Seattle.
Oh, where are you now?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, you had good taste living in Seattle. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, that was my parents' doing, not mine. So, but yes,
You'll give them praise too. Yes, wonderful.
yes, exactly. So, fond memories.
If you ever visit Seattle, please come and visit us. This place is called Interfaith Community Sanctuary. It's actually
Where are you?
In Ballard.
Oh, you're in Ballard. Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I grew up in Hawthorne Hills,
Oh, okay, okay.
so just on the other side.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hannah, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share or a message you'd like to send us out with?
I mean, not necessarily. I don't know if I have these grandiose words of wisdom. I hope that, I don't know, I think that this conversation has been really inspiring for me. It's been provocative. It has caused me to question some of my particular truths and universal understandings. And I just hope that we have the courage and the energy and the inspiration to imagine more of it.
Yes, amen to that. All right, well, I'm going to close us with a word of prayer. God of love, we know you by many names, but we are connected to you and to each other by love. Thank you for those who have this vision of being united in our love and our reverence of you. We thank you for those gathered today and their desire to connect. Bless us in these new relationships and be the energy that ignites a passion for hospitality toward each other. Go with us into the world with feelings of hope and joy and help us share it.